Very happy to see all of you here tonight. Yes, thank you, Aileen, for remembering our recording. Let's see, just a reminder to keep yourself muted during the presentation. We have a few meetings to announce on. We're really excited that on Tuesday, December 13th at 7 p.m. will be our December meeting with a guest speaker from Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And we are going to have a holiday potluck and bonfire on the afternoon of Sunday, December 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. So be watching your email closely this week for more information on both of those. Lynn, do you want to share anything about our super special venue for the holiday potluck?
Sure. It's Fleur de Lis Farm, John and Cappy Montgomery's beautiful place down off of Route 5 and Kingsland Road in Verina. Some of us have been there for Dory Park events or just to see them. It's a lovely, lovely setting, and we're planning on bonfire weather and potluck. And actually, there happens to be a fair amount of adult beverage left over for some other activities that will be on hand for people to enjoy. But it'll be a family-friendly event, and we hope that everybody will come out and just celebrate the season. I'm really excited about that. So I believe it's going to be an Eventbrite notice. I believe one has already gone out, but not to everybody. There he is. There's John, our host. I'm pitching the party, John, our holiday party, and it's going to be a good time. Just a good way to send out what has been a good year. And so thank you, Emery, for that.
So, yeah, thank you, Lynn. Nicole, I saw your question in the chat. The date of the party is Sunday, December 11th from 4 to 6. And then the December meeting is on the 13th at 7, our typical Tuesday at 7 for the actual meeting. We'll now have a couple of updates from a couple of our partners. I know Partnership for Smarter Growth is represented tonight, and I think has an update for us.
Hi, yes, I'm Amy with the partnership.
Hi, Amy.
I can give you guys, we have 2 issues that recently came up for Henrico. One is that the county is considering a proposal to rezone 8 acres of land along Staples Mill Road for a large Sheetz gas station. This would go directly across from the Amtrak station and is an area where the county claims they want to see a mixed use and walkable area. It also goes against the current zoning there, which is mainly residential. This proposal would bring more cars and traffic, increasing the risk to people walking and biking there. Staples Mill Road is also a key corridor for future bike lanes and rapid transit for buses and stuff like that. So that's one of the issues. And Henrico is also proposing a new interchange off I-64 at North Gayton Road. In part, it's supposed to help reduce the backups on Broad Street at the interchange, but it's also likely to open up development north of I-64 in Henrico and even into rural western Hanover, which will require more funding and more infrastructure to go there and probably generate more traffic. So we're advocating for just a eastbound exit off of 64 into Short Plum and an I-64 entrance there as well, but no overpass or connection, and for funding to be prioritized for bus rapid transit to Short Plum. And that's pretty much our update for Henrico.
Thank you so much, Amy. We appreciate it. We have another allied organization with a report tonight, American Battlefield Trust. Chuck, do you have an update for us?
Well, my update in November is going to sound a lot like my October. We have been in the process, you recall, mapping some of our battlefields and some of the related areas that we would like to have preserved in perpetuity. We're in the process working with Henrico County. The information we thought we would have by now from the county, there's some GIS data that is still outstanding. So we're we thought we'd be there beginning of this month. Now it looks like 1st of December is when we'll regroup But as I was explaining, actually to Lynn, I think last week, our map is kind of creating this arc, and I refer to it as a greenway, so that hopefully other groups, whether it's recreation, environmental, can also see some path, bad pun, forward with some of the area that we'd like to have no development and keep it for open space, green space, recreation, and of course for our heritage tourism and battlefield and graveyard protection. So not really an update, although our maps are coming along, but we still need some of that county GIS. They have information that's not available with what we have, and so hopefully soon we'll have something to show to the group at large, and hopefully it coincides with some of their hopes and desires as well. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Chuck. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Do we have any other allied organizations with us this evening that would like to give us an update? James River Association, maybe? All right, if not, we will move along. We have some updates from some of our HCAN action committees. Lynn, are you updating us on climate tonight, or is someone else handling that?
Before we do that, let me do the Greater Sandston 23150, if you're good with that, just in terms of regional group.
Absolutely.
This area is greatly concerned with the need for expanded transmission to serve the data center corridor here around White Oak Technology Park. And there's a meeting with Dominion on Thursday night where they're going to present the new requested route, which is less invasive to homes, but is probably, I suspect, more invasive to important natural areas. So that's going to be very interesting. But we are organized, as I have described before. And then I'll just go on, since I do have the climate. I have a little bit on climate. Unfortunately, Beth Credatus, the chair of the HCAN Action Committee on Climate, could not make the meeting, but they are moving right along. That's a robust group and a robust operation. They are moving on making presentations to the supervisors individually. The meeting with supervisors Nelson and Thornton is on December the 8th. And so that will be in person at the Western Government Center as well as on Zoom. And so there's a fairly large committee that will be meeting with those supervisors to ask almost certainly for a very serious climate action plan on the part of the locality. Henrico County has not got one yet. We would like very much to see one as a part of the comprehensive plan effort. And I would say probably 10 localities in Virginia have already done so. If you're not sure what a climate action plan look like, and Beth might not say this, but I know I've looked at Fairfax, for example. If you Googled Fairfax Climate Action Plan, that will give you an idea of the kind of thing a leading locality might take on. So anyway, we'll certainly have a lot to say at the next meeting in December. Thank you, Anne Marie. That's it for me.
Thank you, Lynn. I'll give a brief report on Comprehensive Plan Committee, and thank you to everybody who has expressed an interest in that committee. It's quite a few of you, and appreciate your patience as I work on a starting document for you all to consider and provide thoughts and edits to. I love the way that Beth Credatus approached her Climate Action Committee with a document for her group to react to. I think it helped generate a lot of great discussion. So that is almost wrapped up. If you had expressed an interest in that committee, be on the lookout for an email by the end of this month with that document If you haven't expressed an interest in that committee but are interested, you can drop your name in the chat or contact us through the website or through Facebook, and we will make sure that you are included in distribution to that group. Our next update is from Tim Bice, the Better Yards Committee. And you are on mute, Tim.
I'm sorry, we'll start over. Thanks to everyone on my committee. We met 2 weeks ago in person. Only one person was not in attendance, so it was a pretty good meeting. We focused on 4 topics, really. One was education on what we can do to better our yards as far as conservation approach. So one was education, either for us or to supply to the public should they need resources. We also talked about resources in general, in particular for where can you find and buy native plants. We're doing some investigations into that. We also mentioned a demonstration garden, putting up a garden in some place, hopefully maybe within on the county property, but we haven't talked to anybody about that yet. But where people can go and identify native species and see what they look like and decide if it'd be a good fit for them. And also we were talking about going to various neighborhoods and setting up a plant exhibit where if neighbors wanted to come by and see what some of these plants look like, want to know about their requirements as far as planting and taking care of them, that type of thing. So those are the 4 things we talked about. Now, having said that, most of these are going to require a little bit warmer weather than we have right now. So we're going to focus until the spring primarily on education, both for ourselves and building our resources. So that's where we are. The next meeting will be after the holidays, and I will update you all following that one.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. Great stuff. I know there's going to be a lot of interest in that education.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I see quite a bit of interest on social media, so I expect you'll get a lot of response to that.
Yeah. In fact, some of you may be on the call tonight. We are going to be getting up with people who signed up with interest on Better Yards as potential education resources. So stay tuned, and I may be getting up with some of you for that. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Well, we will now move into our feature presentation for the evening. Before I introduce our speaker, I'll remind you to please put your questions in the chat, and we will address those when she has finished. I'm very proud to introduce my colleague, the Honorable Nicole Anderson Ellis, elected director and chair of the Henricopolis Soil and Water Conservation District, which is a subdivision of state government charged with protecting the clean water and fertile soil of Henrico County. Nicole is going to share good news from the district and a to-do list for citizens, including practical tips for our households and how best to leverage our political influence to maximize the long-term health of our natural resources. Nicole has a degree in environmental studies from UCLA and a Master of Fine Arts from VCU, where she is a professor of critical thinking, ethical reasoning, and argumentation, I believe all of which I've gotten to see in action, and it's very impressive. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you all so much. I feel like when you describe what I teach that way, it is so different from what it feels like I teach at this point in the semester, where I feel like I teach don't panic. Like that's the sub thread. I am talking to you from my home in Verina. I debated going to the library to guarantee a good signal, and I, on a rainy rainy evening, decided to stay home. So I hope that I'm coming through okay. If it gets rough, I can always turn off my video and that will aid things. So just give me a heads up if I get frozen. I am so delighted to be here for so many reasons, but especially because of so many familiar faces here. Conversations like this really speak to one of the things that I think are essential for our work. Those of us who care about protecting the environment. It's really difficult to care about protecting the environment because it means that we love nature and we love being out in nature, and that means that we're watching it be harmed. And that can be really emotionally challenging for us. And in my experience, there are 3 things that have really made a difference in maintaining my motivation and my well-being with this work. And one is to be active, to be doing things to make a difference, so that we have hope and we can see that we're participating. The second thing is to rest, to play in nature, and really allow ourselves to be fueled back up by what we care about. And the third thing is to collaborate with other people so we can take courage and know that we're not in it alone. And to be here tonight and to be watching additional names pop up, and to know that all of you wonderful people, my neighbors and people I've never met before, but who share this passion, that is exactly the encouragement that helps, I think, all of us keep motivated and keep going. So thank you all so much for what you're doing. I am delighted to be here tonight. Very quick story, but the last time I'm in my 3rd term as an elected official, and the last time I went up for re-election, I was invited to go to a candidate forum, and they asked the candidates to come up on stage. The people who were actually serving, right, the incumbents, were supposed to step up on stage, and so I went to go up on stage, and one of the elected officials who I know said, no, this is just for the people who are serving. And I always felt like that was pretty funny, because and hence the title of this presentation, which is The Invisible Public Servant, right? Because the Soil and Water Conservation District Board is an elected position. We are representatives of the community, and our focus is to address fertile soil and clean water. We are elected to be focused on those resources. But so few people know that this is even an elected position. I did not know. I did not know that soil and water conservation districts existed until they came into my view, roughly 14 years ago, right before I ran for office. And I'll give you a little bit of backstory. During the Dust Bowl, it became, which is known as the first human-caused climate change, right? It came to the attention of Americans that the federal government was not the best authority for managing local natural resources. And so the nation at that time was divided into soil and water districts, and they elected local directors, at that point, mostly farmers, who were charged with educating themselves and then educating others about best practices for farming, and now going about our urban work in a way that protects fertile soil and protects clean water. Virginia has 47 soil and water conservation districts, and the Henricopolis district is rare. It started in 1975, and it's one of the few districts that actually shares borders with a county. The districts are drawn based on population, and most of them are very large, many counties. But Henricopolis, because of the density of Henrico County, we share borders. I ran for office, and I ran for office because John Montgomery talked me into it. Sometimes the phone rings and you don't know when you answer it that it's going to change your life forever. But John reached out. I know, I haven't forgotten. I owe you one. And I did what any, patriotic American does in that situation, which is I called everyone that I could think of and tried to talk them into running instead. And nobody would, except Lynn. Lynn Wilson said, "I'll run if you run." So we campaigned together. We were Ellis and Wilson for soil and water. In my heart, we will always be Ellis and Wilson for soil and water. we campaigned and we were elected and we served a first term together, and then she popped off and I'm still there. And now I serve with Anne Marie, who was elected in the last cycle. I'll tell you why I ran. I was a journalist at the time, and it actually killed my career because it stopped me. I crossed from journalist to activist in an official capacity. But I was writing an article about conservation easements. Then Governor Tim Kaine had given a speech in South Boston, the most confusing of Virginia cities. And he talked about conservation easements, and he had at that time made a pledge to protect 400,000 acres. And I didn't know about conservation easements until I heard that speech, and I was blown away by this tool. And then, as so often happens, you learn about something brand new and suddenly it's everywhere you look. And right after that article, and it was that introduced me to Lynn, who was at that time looking into getting, she and Irv were looking into getting a conservation easement on their property. So I interviewed them. And I found out at that time that you can only two things. I found out that you can only get a conservation easement on your property if the comprehensive plan allows you to. And I found out that you can only get a conservation easement on your property if there's a land trust that will help you. Does everybody know what conservation easements are, or is it worth a 2-minute overview? You guys are all black screens with just nothing but names. If you were my students, I would beg you to turn your 2 minutes. Okay, great. Overview, please. When you buy a piece of land, it's like, this is how Tim Kaine described it. I literally steal his analogy to this day. When you buy a piece of land, it's like you've bought a bundle of sticks, and that bundle, those are all the rights that come with property ownership. And they depend on where you live and what the property is like, but they include the right to live on the property, the right to forbid other people to come on the property, the right to, depending on the zoning, run certain businesses off the property, or subdivide the property, right? So when you get a conservation easement, you give back voluntarily some of those rights. And every conservation easement is written differently, but generally you give back the rights to subdivide the land, and you give back the rights to have businesses on the land that would be contrary to a conservation ethic. So industrial purposes. They often limit the number of buildings that can go on the land, or the overall building footprint. Are you with me? Okay, so a conservation easement is in perpetuity, and it's a wonderful tool for protecting land because it's voluntary. It keeps the land in private hands, and it's perpetual. It's also diffuse. So the land that is being preserved is scattered all over. Therefore, the benefits of it are scattered. And it's a wonderful tool. And I found out during this research that I was doing that it's a right to Virginia landowners to get conservation easements. But in order, and I'll talk about the comprehensive plan alignment later on, but in order to get a conservation easement, you have to get a land trust who is willing to help you, because there has to be an official body that will sign on to the documents with you and that will essentially safeguard the property. So if you own a farm and you get a conservation easement on it, and then you sell that farm and you move away, the new owners, they have to abide by the same restrictions, right? Those sticks have been handed back. They bought a smaller bundle of sticks and somebody has to look over that. Well, at the time, the Capital Region Land Conservancy was in its infancy, right? It wasn't yet holding easements independently. The only person who was holding easements in this area was the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and they would not look at a property if it was less than 100 acres. And that makes sense because it takes as much work to save 100 acres as it does to save 10. So let's go for the bigger bang, right? Like if your goal is conservation of land, absolutely. But in Verina, where there aren't a lot of people who own more than 100 acres, it's mostly smaller land ownership, right? It's 75 or 50 or 20 or 14, right? And people who love their 14 acres love them as much as people who love 100. So the issue became, how do we give access to this law in a way that is just and that will protect land in a community where it's mostly smaller properties? And I found out that conservation, soil and water conservation districts have the right to be land trusts. They can hold easements, but the Henricopolis district never had, and they were not, the current board was not willing to. And that was the motivator for me. And I'm particularly excited to talk about this today because I just found out at, and Lynn, I'm hoping that I'm not breaking this news. I think you saw the email as well, but there was a man who served with us when we first got on the board. There are 5 directors, and Lynn and I were promoting easements, and the other 3 had been on the board when it was not promoting easements. And we got a swing vote, Bob Brewster, who came over, I just found out that he passed this week. But he was an incredible man. He served on the Henricopolis board for decades. And he was, on paper, he and I were absolute opposites politically, but we both love the land. And he listened to our argument about how not only was this the best thing for soil and water, but it was our duty to do it. And he agreed, and he voted with us. And so within that first year, we started holding conservation easements. It has been 10 years since we signed the final documents on the first one. And since then we've protected, the first easement that we signed was 10 acres and it's on Osborne Turnpike. I pass it every single day. And since then we have preserved 776 total, and they are scattered 7 different properties, and they're scattered across the different, most of them are in Varina, but we have them in 3 different districts. And I'm really, really proud of that. But that was my motive to join the board. But since then, my interests have diversified with all of the wonderful work that the district is capable of doing. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. We still work with farmers, as was the original design of the districts back after the Dust Bowl. We help educate farmers on best practices, which may be the most innovative practices, or sometimes they're returned to an old school practice that was lost, but how to farm in a way that prevents erosion and protects water quality. And we not only educate farmers on how to do it, but we help them pay for it if it involves new construction or new technology or an expense. In the last 10 years, we have distributed $1.3 million in Henrico County to farmers for cost share. And all of that is state money. None of that is Henrico County tax dollars. So that's bringing $1.3 million into Henrico County to protect our water and our soil. And then we've slowly been moving, as Henrico County has changed, as we become a more suburban district, we have also changed our focus. And not only do we educate farmers, we're also working with landowners about what we can do in our micro landscapes, right? What are the changes that we can make in our backyards to help protect soil quality and water quality? This can be everything from installing rain gardens to rain barrels to converting lawn to native plants. And we also help homeowners pay for it. So this is through a program called VCAP, the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. And through VCAP, we have brought $80,000 to homeowners in the county to help them pay for changes in their backyard that improve water quality for everyone. And this is particularly important because the way in which it improves water quality is by mitigating stormwater runoff. So you guys all just voted on help me with the word.
Referendum.
Steve, what's the word?
Referendum.
Thank you. The bond referendum. I was going to say, Steve Yob, jump in here. We all just voted on the bond referendums, and one of them was specific to stormwater runoff and flooding, right? And one of the things that we can do to mitigate flooding, which we know is such an issue across the county, is to incorporate these VCAP techniques, right? Small scale, local, holding the water in our own backyards and allowing it to slowly soak back in so it doesn't race off and create a torrent in a creek which will cause erosion. So we're very proud of that work. And then in addition to educating farmers and educating homeowners, we're also working with the next generation. Our education specialist, Lindy Durham, is a phenomenon. She goes into schools all over the county, literally 60 different public schools in the last decade, and she has taught more than 43,000 students. And Henrico County has not paid a penny for it. Henrico County Public Schools hasn't paid a penny for it. It's all been through Henricopolis funding, because we know that when those kids start paying attention to which creek is near their house, or when they start to learn about what it means what their parents are planting in the backyards, that is really going to shape the face of this county moving forward. So we're super proud of that. And how's my time, Aileen? I'm good. Okay,
You've
then I'm
got
gonna
plenty of time. Yeah.
Okay, yay! Because I wrote down like 5 hours worth of notes. I want to talk about kind of my passion project, which happened accidentally. I have a wonderful or horrible luck, but I tend to notice calls for grant applications 2 weeks before they're due. I'm sure that there is a predictable cycle and that people find out about them 6 months out, but they always cross my desk 2 weeks before the deadline. And maybe that serves us well because we've had really good success. We collaborated on a grant with the Community Food Collaborative that launched Cornerstone Community Farm, which is at Fairfield Middle School. And it took a 4.5 acre vacant lot. It's underneath power lines. Nothing could be built there. It was weeds taller than I am. And we were able to convert it into a working school farm. And then that was $50,000. And again, federal money coming in. And then we were able to get a second grant to put in the food forest. So a grant that covered the trees and the labor to install the food forest. And that has continued to be kind of a jewel in the county education crown. And now we're working on the second project. This is a grant that we just completed this fall with the Department of Forestry. It's a Trees for Clean Water grant. I found out about it the same day that I happened to be having lunch with Alicia Atkins, who represents Verina on the school board. And I mentioned it to her, how wonderful it would be to write this grant and do a tree planting project at a school. And she brilliantly mentioned the brand new specialty center at Verina High School, the Center for Environmental Sustainability and Environmental Education and Sustainability. So I reached out to their director. Her name is Cassandra Epps. She's a Verina local. She used to teach at the middle school right across the way, and she just switched over to the high school to run this program. And she was thrilled. So here's the vision. We're going to replace a 3/4 acre sun-baked Bermuda grass quad that by all accounts is unused by students. They don't sit on the grass. They don't even cross through it. And we're going to pull that up and replace it with a forest classroom. It's going to be native trees, native shrubs and ground cover. We're installing a rain garden. There will be signage explaining the conservation value of all this. And the work is going to be done in active partnership with the inaugural class of students at the Environmental Center. So they are already at work deciding which trees will grow best in the space, which native trees they want to have planted. They will be actively involved in the planting process. And the project was fully funded by the Department of Forestry. And if I can sing their praises for just a second, they liked the grant so much, but there were a couple of elements that wouldn't technically qualify under the Trees for Clean Water. So they funded what they could under that, and then they went and found another grant to cover the signs and one other element. So when they came back, they said, we've got all the money, but it's from 2 different grants. So super supportive, and we're really excited about that. And these are the kind of projects that when I mentioned at the very beginning that it is so encouraging to have positive things, right? So whatever is going on, it's like, that's a step forward, that's a step in the right direction, and one that involves young people. Right. I think you can talk about trees all day long, but you give a child the opportunity to plant a tree and then spend 4 years watching it grow. And I think that that's the way you convert a heart. That is what the district has been up to. I would love now to kind of take off my district hat and switch gears for just a moment and slide into a conversation about the comprehensive plan, because that's the second element of what led me to run for office and what impacts conservation easements specifically. So there are two things that you need if you want to get a conservation easement on your land. One is you have to have a land trust that's willing to help you out. And the second, and luckily the Capital Region now is rich with that. In addition to the Virginia Outdoor Foundation, which still serves our area, we have the Capital Region Land Conservancy, which has been doing incredible work. And the Soil and Water District is also holding easements. But the other thing that you need is that you cannot get an easement on your property, a conservation easement, if the comprehensive plan shows an alternate future use. So you could own, a 300-acre pristine farm and want to see it protected in a conservation easement. But if the comprehensive plan has that land earmarked for a denser use or an up-planned use, for example, if they have it as a future subdivision, or if they have it for industrial use, or they imagine someday that a road will go through it, even if that's not your family's plan, if it's in the comprehensive plan, it will deny you the ability to get a conservation easement. Essentially, it puts that law out of reach. And a lot of people do not know this, that the comprehensive plan, which is often referred to as just a plan or a roadmap, it does have concrete impacts on what we're allowed to do with our own property. It also has impacts on how we, on the value of our property. I know some neighbors of ours down here off Osborne and Kingsland were shocked in the last comprehensive plan update to see that on the comprehensive plan, their home was the future home of a water treatment plant. They had no idea. This was not a conversation that had taken place with anyone at any point, but it was just an imagining by someone that worked for the county. But that could have profound impacts on their property value. It's hard to sell a home that might be taken by eminent domain, or that someone might even have the fear of that. I know another example out here is what is now the Cherokee Museum. When that building was last for sale, there were some people who were looking at it and they were interested in putting a coffee shop in it. But when they saw that the comprehensive plan has Osborne Turnpike and most other roads in the county as eventually being widened, they feared that that would take away their land, and so they stepped out of the deal. So there are very practical reasons why it's important that landowners individually, as a part of this process, go and look at the plan and see what is being proposed for their personal property. I think that's really an important part of the messaging around what's happening. Because again, I think just the way that the Soil and Water District can be an invisible resource, likewise, the comprehensive plan can, a lot of people are not aware of the impact that it can have on them. And the second thing I want to bring up about that, as much as it's important that we as individuals look up our own property, the kind of the flip side of that is, during the last comprehensive plan, I became actively involved when I learned about the impact that it could have on conservation easements, because I thought, well, a lot of people don't know about that. And I worked with a number of the people here now. I won't mention any of you by name because I'm afraid I'll leave somebody out, but we worked collectively. In fact, I met many of you through that process. And one of the things that we learned was, as many tiny little things as we might have wanted to have changed, that our effort was maximized by choosing the biggest bang for the buck. What were kind of the most egregious suggestions? And then all of us speaking with one voice in opposition to those. There are two that I remembered. One was the proposed rezoning, or it's not rezoning, it's up planning on the plan for Varina Farms, which is the beautiful 4,000-acre property that's right at the base of the Varina-Enon Bridge. And that was proposed to be upgraded to suburban mixed use. And that would have created a situation for what's called leapfrog development, where once that farm so deep in the county has been upland, anybody else who wants to rezone their property can point to that as an example and essentially sue the county if they don't get permission, right? You should let me do my farm because you let them do their farm, right? So it's very dangerous, and it predicts suburban sprawl when you do that. And so we worked very hard, and we pushed very hard to reverse that, and we're effective. And the second change was there was a proposal to take the term prime agriculture, right, which has a very specific meaning, right, prime agriculture, and replace it with the term rural residential, right? And we were able to, essentially what that does is point to every single farm and say it's eventually going to be a subdivision. And we felt that that was not reflective of what the people of the county wanted, and we were able to reverse those two elements. And so I think that that's a way for us to move forward into the comprehensive plan, thinking about on the individual scale, what is planned for our property, and to reach out to the county about that specifically, but also collectively to look at what are the biggest opportunities, and then also the biggest risks, and to come together with one voice around those as a community. And I think I'm going to pause there and maybe put my soil and water hat back on and see if there are any questions. I guess maybe you're putting them into the chat. I'm not simultaneously reading the chat, so I can look at them now, or I can just,
There is,
you guys raise your hand.
Nicole, there's one question that has come to me directly in the chat. Is the district at all involved with industrial solar and the conversion of fields and forests? One concern is best practices for planting around solar and seeing this happen in Henrico.
It's been, we are actively involved in the conversation, because when you're talking about preserving farmland, solar is one of the options for that. It's a way that families can afford to keep land and not sell it for residential use. There are differing perspectives statewide within the soil and water district community about the kind of pros and cons of this. One of the things that we do know is that solar fields solar arrays get put up even at the industrial level, and they do get taken down. And that doesn't happen with subdivisions or strip malls. That sort of construction and loss is permanent. So there is a leaning towards this as maybe the lesser of evils. But also there's the obvious benefit that when we're talking about solar power, we're talking about mitigating climate change. So the answer is yes, we are talking about it, but the jury is still out.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. So if you just want to open it up to folks to toss them out to you, up to you.
Sure. Any questions? And I love a short meeting, so if there are no questions, that's great.
That means you did
question,
such a
Nicole.
lovely, thorough job explaining to us.
This is Catherine Nicole. Are the Soil and Water Conservation District meetings open to the public?
Yes, they are. And they're open to the public in person, or they're open to the public through Zoom.
Where are they announced?
That they are the third Thursday of every month, which is 2 days from today. They are at 4 o'clock, and they are in the West Government Center on 8600 Dixon Road. Anne Marie, does that sound right? Anytime I'm saying a number.
In the
if I'm not
Human
looking at
Services
the paper.
Building.
Great. There are also, Catherine, Aileen put the our website in the chat, and they're all listed on.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah,
And
really.
Lynn is asking when the soil and water directors will be on the ballot again, and it will be next year, next November.
Really quick, Nicole, I have put resources of what Nicole have talked about. They're all on the in the chat.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aileen, for keeping up with all those resources. It was a lot of them, and appreciate your putting them in there. Are there
I
any
will
other
say-
questions? I'm sorry.
Well, just while we're waiting, before anyone has a question. Yeah, you, John. It's one of the things that we're going to be looking for with the Varina Grove, which is what we're calling the forest classroom at Varina High School. We will need volunteers to water in the summer. So we're going to be having, I am talking to Alicia about Friends of Varina Grove to have people who are on a rotation to stop off there. We're going to get gator bags as a part of the refilling those bags. Opportunities for pruning or whatever needs may be moving forward. And there are also other opportunities to volunteer with the district through our creek cleanup program, the Hawks program, and it is listed on the website as well. So thanks again to Aileen for putting that in there.
Any other questions for Nicole tonight? Nicole, thank you so much. Your
Absolutely.
knowledge and your passion are unparalleled, and it's an honor to serve with you and to learn from you.
Right.
So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you guys so very, very much. It was a pleasure.
Before we say good night, I know that Bland, you mentioned earlier when we were just getting ready to start the meeting about information you learned recently about the board retreat. And I know Steve Yob is on the line and he might be able to add to that information as well. Bland, can you share that? And maybe Steve, you can fill in the gaps if there are any.
Okay, what I heard was that the board retreat will be December 2nd and 3rd at the Henrico Theater by invitation only, in person, but also live streamed. And as far as interest to this group, perhaps on the 3rd, Steve will be talking about the environmental committee. Do I have that right, Steve?
Yes, thank you, Bland. It is
Okay.
indeed the 2nd and the 3rd at the theater. And there is limited capacity there. And there's a whole lot of folks and technicians and news media and whatnot that probably will be in attendance. But there is an online option, and certainly I would encourage you all to listen in. It's a day and a half, so it's a lot of content, but you can learn about what your county is up to.
And your presentation will be on the 3rd?
I think it's the first presentation on the 3rd. That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, great.
A compendium of 29 employees providing opinions on things we should do for our environment. So we're trying to distill that now into something for our board to listen to.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate the update.
You're quite welcome.
Well, just to reiterate, our December meeting will be on Tuesday, December 13 at 7 p.m. with a guest speaker from Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and our holiday potluck on Sunday, December 11 from 4 to 6. So please watch your email for details on both of those and opportunities to RSVP. Lynn, is there anything else you would like to add before we close out tonight?
I don't think so. I don't have anything here. How about anybody else? Bland's got one. Yeah.
I see a question on the chat asking whether the board retreat will be recorded.
And I'm not sure, Bland. I'm not sure
Okay.
to the questioner, but I think it is. The board meetings that are twice a month are always recorded and they're always available to you. I believe this will be recorded, but you could send an email to Ben Shepherd in our Media Services Department if you'd like a link to the recording if you're unable to watch it in person.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
You're welcome. That's Ben Shepherd.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else before we sign off tonight? Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, Nicole, thank you so much. That was wonderful to hear your perspective and the history of conservation easements and other initiatives with Henricopolis. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and we look forward to the 2 opportunities to connect with you in December. Thanks, everybody.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.